Welcome to the Parenting on the Spectrum show with board-certified behavior analyst and infant-toddler development specialist, Theresa Alexander Inman. Parenting on the Spectrum dives into real stories, challenges, and triumphs, offering invaluable insights and support for families on your unique journey. Let's get into the episode.
Welcome. So excited to have with me today Mr. John Beyer. He is the dad of an autistic young man, and he's the author of Live a Little Better. So he's going to tell us about his journey. Welcome, John.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
You are most welcome. Thank you for being here to share your story, to share your heart.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. Did I pronounce your name correctly, Beyer?
Beyer, that's it.
Okay, just wanted to make sure because I have this. It's something in my head just wants to say Beyer, and I'm like, I don't know. Okay.
It drives me nuts. I go into a doctor's office and I say, my name is John Beyer. I'm here to see Dr. So-and-so. And they go, okay, Mr. Beyer, have a seat.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm like, where'd you hear that from? Okay, go ahead.
I'm glad I didn't do that.
No, you didn't.
So tell us, excuse me, live a little better. Why? I mean,
I have two children. I have my daughter, Lauren, was the firstborn, and she's 35 now. And 20 months later, my son just turned 33. My son was born, and most of your listeners or viewers will know that 80% are boys. And 2 years old, my son showed signs of, all of a sudden he fell off the map. You know, when his eye contact disappeared. I mean, just disappeared. And it was like I would put eye to eye, face to face, and he would refuse to look at me. And it was, what the hell is going on here? And so, you know, I've had quite a life story, and my daughter, you know, they're very much adults now, and she knows of my story, and she convinced me. She one day just turned around and said, "Dad, you have to write a book. You have to write a book because it's going to inspire people." Because I did come from quite a background growing up, some challenges, and we've become very successful in business, and we give back to the autism community. We live on Long Island, up in Long Island in New York, and most people in the autism community know of John and Amy Beyer, and they know, oh, you're Greg's parents.
Of course, famous Greg.
Yeah, and we like to think that we're making a difference, at least up here, you know, and doing some things. So yeah, he was developing fine, and all of a sudden he fell off a cliff. And we threw ourselves right into it. You know, 31 years ago when he was diagnosed, it was in December also. Wow. There wasn't an Autism Speaks. There weren't any resources. There wasn't an internet. For all you people listening to this right now, you couldn't just Google something. You know, it didn't exist. Nothing existed really. And they were blaming it on refrigerated mothers back then. And we read and went to every seminar and attended everything. And the only thing that had any clean data that worked was behavior modification, ABA. And we bought into that right away. That doesn't mean we didn't try everything else. We tried chelation. We tried diflucam, which is a buildup of yeast. I mean, after... You know, I feel guilty sometimes thinking like my son Greg was my little science project there for a while. But we tried a drug called secretin. I don't know if you're familiar with any of these drugs. Secretin was a medication given to a number of autistic kids who had severe gastro problems. It's a drug that's made to stimulate the enzymes. And not only did their gastro problems get better, but their symptoms so improved that they were being called cured. Oh. And my son never had gastro problems, but they did clinical studies on it. And these people, there was documentation that a number of kids, at least a handful, greatly improved. And I had it checked out with my doctor, and I couldn't get it prescribed. And I managed to obtain the drugs, had to be delivered intravenously. I got a doctor to do it intravenously, off the record. This is all in the book.
Yeah.
And you're waiting and waiting, waiting for results, and it didn't make a difference. The only thing that's made any measurable difference is applied behavioral analysis.
Wow. And John, I almost hear like a tinge of regret when you talk about all the things that you've tried. And I just want to say, because I know that a lot of parents are out there trying things too. You don't know what you don't know. You did the best that you could with no information. You were out there floundering. At least today there's the internet. Be careful of the information that you get from the internet, people. However, there is more information out there that you have to sift through. And I guess in a way, it's a blessing that there wasn't a whole lot for you to,
Yeah.
pick from, because God knows.
But we flew to California. We went all over the place. And my story speaks to that. I mean, I grew up very, very poor. And we were being evicted. We were on food stamps, public assistance, and I was building a business. I became an alcoholic. My parents were very, very bad alcoholics, very bad. And my father died when I was 21. My mother died when I was 24. And it was pour me a drink. And I vowed I was never going to let alcoholism ruin my life like I watched it do to my parents, but that wasn't the case. It was ruining my life too. And I got sober at the age of 36. I went to Alcoholics Anonymous, walked into my first meeting. My last drunk, I want to speak about this for a minute. If anybody out there needs this for inspiration, because this book is more about alcoholism and recovery than it is maybe about any other subject, although that's the chord that runs through the whole book, actually. Although my son takes up the most ink. And when you're writing your memoir, you don't plan on that. And I just did it chronologically. I started it with the words, it was moving day. And the reason why I started it that way is I was 8 years old at the time. We were moving into this development on Long Island in Queens called Lefrak City. And they had a billboard on the Long Island Expressway. I don't know if you're familiar with the Long Island Expressway. It's the major thoroughfare that cuts down the heart of the middle of Long Island, all the way from the Midtown Tunnel of Manhattan, all the way out to Riverhead, to the tip of Long Island. And there was a billboard that stood there for years advertising the development of Lefrak City, and it said, "Live a little better." On there. And it was decades. It was up there for decades. And my daughter was in college. She's 35 now. But she was in college and she was taking photography. So she had a 35 millimeter camera. And we're in traffic, because you're always in traffic on this road. And all of a sudden I see her put the window down, and she took a picture. And that's the picture on the cover of the book. Yeah, so it came full circle. She's the one who pushed me to write the book. Because we did go. It's more than a rags to riches story. It's a survival story, and obviously fighting autism, being confronted by autism. We're all in that war together. Just like the alcoholics in my meetings that I go to, who still to this day, almost 40 years later, we're in the war together with our parents. I'm still friends with the people that I met when 38 years ago. When I was first diagnosed.
Well, yeah, because community is so important. And seeing as you were almost pretty much by yourself, and that you had your family, but then there weren't as many people diagnosed with autism, I would imagine, at that time in your community. So developing your little village was vital to, I think, growth and support and just, survival.
Information. We were hungry for information.
Yeah.
Like I said, we attended every seminar. I have no regrets about the things that we tried with my son.
Okay.
Maybe what you heard was a tone of sadness that none of it worked.
Right. Yeah.
I still don't have. My son can go to a fine restaurant tonight if we wanted to take him there and sit there and be a gentleman. But I don't know what he's thinking. And I didn't have a good, close relationship with my father. I detail that in the book, because he was an alcoholic and he died when I was 21.
Mhm.
And I craved and vowed that I was going to have a close personal relationship with my son. And autism robs you of that to a large degree. It does.
Yeah.
And there's a story there. You have to read it. The book will make you cry. If you want to cry, if you want to be inspired, read the book. And if you know anybody with a drinking problem, read the book.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you first heard then that your son was diagnosed with autism, when you first received that diagnosis, what kind of feelings went through you? I mean, and knowing then at the time you were struggling with alcoholism, and then you get this news, what did that do to your world?
Well, fortunately, I was already sober 5 years,
Oh,
so I had a solid foundation.
good.
But I remember clearly, walking from the psychologist's office, because still a subjective diagnosis. They still don't have a blood test. They still don't have anything, to confirm it.
Mhm.
And I remember walking back to the car. My wife had him in one hand, and I had the other hand. And I had a voice in my head saying, "John, you're going to have to make a lot of money. This is going to be expensive."
Mm.
I remember saying that to myself. And back then, they didn't have early intervention as readily available as today. And ABA was like ABA. We went out to California to meet with Lovas's disciples, Dr. Doreen Green Pache from CARD. And yeah, I mean, we did everything.
Mm.
My wife is a go-getter, and we did everything. So the feelings were, we were scared. I was scared. My wife didn't quite get it. She didn't realize the seriousness at first. As bright as she is, she admits, and she doesn't admit a lot, that she didn't get it right away. But she got it. And then when she gets into something, she sinks her teeth into it and takes it all the way. My wife's like an authority. She's a go-to now on Long Island about autism. I tell you, my son's 33 now.
Mhm.
We get a phone call a week. One of us gets a phone call a week, even now, and we're in our 60s, asking for advice about schools, schooling, therapists. Did you try this? Somebody told me to call you. Somebody said this. My son needs. Did you hear about this place? Yeah, we don't know it all, and we're a little out of touch now as we get older. But and then housing. Housing is a big deal. I'll tell
Mhm.
anybody who's listening, if they have a child with autism, you really got to get started at 10 years old. And when the kid is 10 years old, your child's 10 years old, start applying and start, if your kid is going to be dependent and not be able to, you have to get legal guardianship and get it all out of the way.
Mhm.
And you as a parents still know best, better than anybody, any therapist that sat in front of my kid. And my son's had some great therapists, ABA therapists. We used to have a whiteboard with the schedule, and he had as many as 5 different therapists coming in a week. Yeah. And we were paying out of pocket. So we used to joke that my son went to Harvard twice.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
can be pricey.
yeah. Then
Yes.
started paying for it and creating early intervention. Then
Mhm.
my wife got on the school board. She got very involved. She became president. She was on the school board for 12 years. She created life skill programs for our local school district. And I took the 3-hour class to become a parent member and an advocate, as well as so did she. And it's one of the most rewarding things I've ever done is sit in a room and, AA teaches you to share your experience, your strength, and your hope with other
Mhm.
alcoholics. Well, here I am. I'm sharing my experience, strength, and hope with other parents who, we've been down the road before, and this is what's going to happen. And sitting in a room where the school district doesn't want to part with the dollars,
Mm.
and the parent doesn't know that there's a program where they're legally obligated to do X, Y, and Z, and that there's a program where we can suggest something. And then I say, well, can we possibly do this? and you see the special ed director look at you. That's something we could, yeah, I think we could do that. And I said, yeah, I mean, there's no reason why we should,
Right.
And so now it got to the point where if we walked in, they just gave the kid whatever they wanted because they knew we had the law, and we always went in with honey, not with vinegar. We always led with honey.
And that's important. And it's always important to, parents get an advocate if you don't feel that your child is receiving the education that's their right, right? They have a right to a free and appropriate education. And if you don't feel that they're receiving that, please get an advocate. I've worked in school districts, so I totally get exactly what you're saying. And, I remember one time one of my supervisors, because there was an advocate coming, and the person said, well, just make sure you've got all your T's crossed and your I's dotted, because this person is the advocate.
That would be me and my wife. So the one thing I would just say to you is that even if you feel like your kid is getting everything, you still might want to get an advocate on an occasion at least, because you may not be aware of what's really available or every single thing that they're entitled to.
That is
and I remember one kid was not on the spectrum, but he had this bad behavior that was interfering with everything. He was biting his shirt. And everybody's talking about this stuff. And I just said, I know the district had behaviorists on staff. I said, you have a behaviorist. Why don't we just get the behaviorist involved and let her write a program and work this out? And everybody just got silent. Said, yeah, that's what we should do. Duh.
Yeah.
So, simple things. But it's always a fight, and you always have to advocate for yourself. You do.
Yes. And, don't be afraid. A lot of parents I've seen walk in afraid. Not my friend Kate. She was actually the first one she actually is the mom of a young lady I used to work with. Yeah, I worked with her family. And I remember going in there, and, it just emphasized the importance of you as a parent knowing that you know your child better than anybody else, and letting people know that you know your child better than anybody else. Because, I remember walking into that meeting, and there was the advocate, myself, Kate and her husband, and the school official said something. And she got really upset, slammed her hand on the desk, which got everybody's attention. And I was really surprised, because this meek lady, all of a sudden, and, just let everybody know, listen, my child is capable, because she worked with her a lot at home, and they weren't seeing a lot of it at school. So instead of asking, what is she doing at home? And then working to marry the two, there were just a lot of assumptions. And like I said, never heard that Mama Bear speak up until in that way until that day. And I just gained a whole new level of respect for her.
Right. That's what you gotta do.
Yeah, and you've got to, don't be afraid. Sometimes, the schools will tell you one thing or another, and it's just really important that you believe and go in with that belief and just know.
Yeah.
If your child needs somebody with them in the classroom, then ask for it.
Yeah. There should be coordination between home and school.
Yes.
There really, not should be, there really has to be for it to work optimally. And the better it works, then maybe you can cut back on services down the road. If my son greatly improved, his negative behaviors for the most part are pretty absent. I wish my son would communicate more. I think he's trapped by OCD. I see OCD run through the majority of this, using the term this population, but our kids. And I think that interferes with things that they're not free to think of other things because they're obsessive on so many little things.
Yes.
Something. It's funny. Somebody said if you could take away one symptom or one part of your son's autism, what would you do? And I stopped and I thought, and they said, and I wasn't giving an answer right away. And they said, would you want him to speak more? I said, not necessarily, because I think he would maybe just repeat things more. I said, I think if I could take away his OCD, it would free up his mind and he'd be able to speak more about other things. And that's my feeling about what I see. His roommates are that way, and the kids that he works with today. So I gotta tell you a great story. Your listeners are gonna love to hear this. So my daughter, a beautiful woman, and my son started going to a special needs camp in High Falls, New York, called Camp Huntington, and it was a great camp. And they had an exchange program with different countries where they would bring the counselors over for the summer and promise them a great summer. Meanwhile, they're paying them very little money, but nonetheless, see America, see New York. And so this kid comes over from Wales, and his name is Patrick, and he becomes my son's camp counselor. I'll make a long story short. He was a very good-looking guy, and my wife and I would drop our son off at camp for 4 weeks or whatever he was going for, 3 weeks sometimes. Once or twice he went for 6 weeks. And then come back and would tell my daughter, Lauren, you have to see this Patrick. He's very good-looking. So I would say, enough with Patrick being so good-looking, and well, they met, and they got married, and we're expecting our second grandchild. So my son introduced my daughter to a husband without saying, meet Patrick, Lauren. So now Patrick, along with two mothers who have children with autism, Patrick Bardsley and Stella Spinakos and Nicole Segru, founded an organization here on Long Island called Spectrum Designs. And Spectrum Designs does embroidery and print screening of anything. They do coffee mugs, they do pens, they do everything. They do a lot. They're very successful now, and it's led by he's the executive director, CEO of that Spectrum Designs now. And my son works there. My son, they employ adults. They employ 50 or 60 people on the spectrum. Full range. Some kids with some real challenges, and then some very high functioning people, and in the office doing some customer service stuff and stuff. And it's amazing. It's really an amazing social enterprise. They refer to it as. It is a 501(c)(3). I would invite all your viewers and listeners to spectrumdesigns.org and support it. And their workmanship is unbelievable. He's spoken at Microsoft headquarters and Uber and Google's headquarters on behalf of what it is to employ adults on the spectrum and so on and so forth. He's a big advocate for that now, and he's quite a guy. And it's the place it's beautiful. It hums. It's really amazing. I'm on the board. I'm a founding member on the board. And we're making it work year after year. It's like the 11th year already. Yeah.
That is so beautiful. Oh my goodness. People go there, please. Yeah. John, I want to ask you before we go, are there any lessons that you learned from writing your book? Anything come up?
Yes. This funny thing is, I don't know if I mentioned, I'm in the moving and storage business, and I've done very well with that. I worked very hard. As a kid, we were poor. Eviction notices on the door all the time. And I vowed that it was not going to be poor. So I invested a lot in real estate and did well. And I used to have a mantra of one truck a year. I would buy a truck a year and grow by one truck a year and increase revenue by X and so on and so forth. And then, of course, you get sober and it's one day at a time. And discrete trials with ABA is also breaking it down. My son's first word was apple. He didn't say apple. He said first.
Yes.
He couldn't say apple first. And so it's living life incrementally and living life that from that viewpoint, from that mindset, is what really works, and makes you enable to achieve. I want some people, if any of you, anybody listening, the book's going to inspire you. I'm getting letters from all over the country and emails and stuff, and I'm very proud of it. And all the money from the sale of the book goes to Spectrum Designs as a donation. I'm not looking to make money off the book. I'm looking to get the message out there of that you can survive alcoholic parents and poverty, and you can survive your own alcoholism, and you can survive, raising a child with autism. By the way, divorce rate, among the general population is 50%. Among families with a special needs child, it jumps to 80%.
Yes.
And that's a big statement there. So when I say you can survive it, so a day at a time, incrementally, you can get a lot of things accomplished in life.
Yes, such hope, John, such hope. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I thank you for being vulnerable with your story, because a lot of people, who, I remember somebody wanted to come on, and, well, she did actually come on, and she struggled with alcoholism. She said, well, who's going to hear my story? I said, you know what? Seeing as the divorce rate is so high, it's much higher among families who have children with autism, or any diagnosis really. What do you think the chances of alcoholism in that population might be? Because you got to survive. People are doing what they can to hold it together. So I can only imagine, I don't know the numbers, I can only imagine though that would be an issue, because it's life, right?
Yeah.
And life happens at every different stage. And if we're going to say, well, yeah, like I said, with all the other numbers, I think it makes sense that it would be higher as well.
I can tell you're a behaviorist because you're talking about the numbers. You like data.
Yeah. My professor, Jose Martinez Diaz, always said, if you're not collecting data, you're not doing ABA. That's how we know it's working.
So Patrick wound up getting a master's, and my son-in-law, and I dropped out of college because I was drinking at the time, and I never finished. I only have 30-something credits. And one day he says to me, I used the word antecedent to a behavior, and he looked at me, he says, I forget, with his beautiful British accent, sometimes I forget that you really, it's like you too have a master's in autism. And I looked at him and I said, I have a doctorate.
Right.
Parents have doctorates. Live a little better, everybody.
Yes,
Live a little better.
Live a little better. Thank you so much, John. I really appreciate you being here, sharing your heart with us. And, like I said, again, being so vulnerable so that giving others the license to also be vulnerable. Yeah. And to our audience, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you here, same place.